Now that we've successfully inserted a description for this trip, as well as for the scope of work, and created a relationship between this scope and the serviceable item located on site, we can add our labor and/or materials used during the call. Previously, we have reviewed how to add labor and materials from the serviceable item. And because the serviceable item exists on this location, and we've created a relationship between it and the scope, we could use this entry point in order to enter the labor and materials for this particular service call. However, it's important to know how to add labor and materials when there is no serviceable item available. Labor and materials can be added from either the Labor tab or the Materials tab on the mobile application. However, it is also possible to add this information from the Order Summary tab. Anywhere you see a blue plus next to the word labor or next to the word materials is an entry point where you can potentially make new entries. Let's review how to add labor from the Order Summary. To add a new labor entry, to summarize the work that was done and the hours spent on site, tap the blue plus next to the word labor. Just as you have previously, you'll want to make sure that you enter all of the appropriate information, including the work date, the actual time spent on site, the serviceable item you are working with if it exists, and selecting an appropriate labor code, pay type, and cost type. So let's complete the information as a sample. There's no need for us to change the scope number because there's only one on this call, and the work date is today's date. The actual time spent on site, however, does need to be reflective of the amount of time it took us to sort out the trouble and get it repaired. Next, because this entry isn't coming from the serviceable item, you do have to create that relationship. Your labor code should be reflective of the work doing, and you should indicate the pay type for the hours worked. After-hour service can be recorded at either time and a half or double time. In this case, we're going to say that we got this call after midnight, so we're going to enter the time in as double time. Next, you can indicate the cost type. Again, we're entering field labor here, so there's no need for us to modify this. When you've finished making your labor entry, you can tap the white arrow in the upper left-hand side of the screen to return to the labor detail and make an additional entry. Let's enter another labor line for the time spent traveling. Now that we have two labor lines in place, one reflective of our travel and the other reflective of the time worked on site, we can either choose to leave these so they're visible for the customer when we review, or we can tap in the space next to the word labor and collapse the labor section so that information is not visible to the customer when we ask for a signature. Adding materials is just as simple. Simply tap the blue plus next to the word material and search for your item. Tap to select your item, and once it's orange, it's been added to the work order. Tap the white arrow to return to the materials list, and then if you need to adjust the quantity, tap the material item to adjust the quantity. Again, make sure you review the scope number as well as the serviceable item to make sure the relationships are accurately reflective of where parts were used. Once you've finished with your material entry, tap the white arrow to return to the summary, and again, if you wish to hide the materials used so the customer cannot see them while you're asking for a signature, then you can tap in the area to the right of the word materials to collapse that section as well. Before completing the call, you will have to make sure that you get a customer's name and a signature if there is someone on site who can do so, just as you would for any other call.